Selamat pagi dari Brisbane di Australia. Saya berharap bahwa pertemuan Anda semua dengan Universitas Queensland berjalan dengan baik. Saya minta maaf bahwa saya tidak dapat hadir secara bertemu dengan Anda dan berbicara dengan Anda semua. Saya memahami bahwa Anda semua ingin membangun keterampilan LIPI untuk meningkatkan dampak dari penelitian Anda pada tindakan, kebijakan dan pemerintah. Helen Ross dan Lee Wilson telah meminta saya untuk berbagi cerita tentang upaya universitas kami untuk menciptakan dampak seperti itu. Saya akan membahas bagaimana peneliti dapat meningkatkan dampak dari pekerjaan mereka pada kebijakan pemerintah. Mengapa penting, bagaimana Anda bisa melakukan hal ini, dan bagaimana mengukur dampak. Tapi saya minta maaf karena sekarang saya akan beralih ke bahasa Inggris sebagai saya bahasa Indonesia belum lancar. The context for researchers has changed. Researchers are increasingly being encouraged to respond and deliver to end users. And by end users, we mean government for policy, industry for innovation, and civil society for contribution to knowledge and debate as trusted advisors. There is great value in disseminating research findings beyond a research organisation or beyond the university. And one of the main reasons is that it can maintain the relevance and the profile of your organisation. But to do this, it is often outside the comfort zone of many researchers. And this is because there are many differences. The type of writing that we do as researchers is very long. The words that we use are too large. The research process is very slow. And the methods that we use must always be very sound, and the knowledge that we rely on must be very rigorous, and this can contribute to it being slow and even expensive. So therefore, to make the change to expand, to communicate research with end users, we need to listen to the end users about what they want, what the documents or the engagement should look like, how we should engage with them, and when it should be delivered. So in today's presentation, I will focus on some ideas on how to deliver research to policymakers. But what I won't be doing is looking at how to engage with the policymakers, which would be a very good first step. This will just be about how to take the research product to the policymaker. I will also not talk about how to disseminate to civil society and to industry, but you might find that some of these approaches for engaging with government are similar anyway. So the three things that I will look at are the definition of policy and how it relates to government. Secondly, we will talk about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which give a structure to some of the research done at LIPI. And thirdly, this presentation will be delivered through a case study of what we have done here at the University of Queensland's Global Change Institute, where I work. But please keep in mind, this is early days for us. So we have made some progress and we are happy to share this, but we are also still learning. To start with, here is a definition from the Oxford English Dictionary about policy. As you can see, it's a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by an organisation or individual. And that might be, most often, a government. So keeping that in mind, we now look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, many countries, including Australia and including Indonesia, are signatories to these Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And for many countries, these will now become policy, or these will inform policy. The history of the Sustainable Development Agenda that created these 17 goals is called Transforming Our Future, and it was launched in September 2015. And the goals that you can see need to be attained by 2030. There are 17 goals and underneath 169 targets, and underneath those over 200 indicators to measure whether the targets and the goals are being achieved. There are 193 countries who have signed the SDGs, and these build on the achievements of the Millennium Development Goals that were previous and that finished in 2015. The importance of the SDGs is that they require countries to look both in their own country and overseas. So this is a new challenge for Australia, because when we had the Millennium Development Goals, the focus was more on overseas and what could our aid help with. And now with the SDGs, we look both in Australia and overseas. Another aspect of the importance of the SDGs is that it can open conversations about priority issues and the ambitiousness of the end goals. So some of these topics around zero hunger and education and gender equality and safe water, these are all old conversations, but the SDGs help them to become new conversations again. It's also helpful because the government can frame their responses to the SDGs, so these old conversations can be reignited and put into new policies. But there are difficulties with the SDGs. One of the questions is, where do you start? So many goals, so many targets, too many indicators. Which one is the priority? Do any of these targets overlap and the goals overlap and either support or undermine each other? And does each country or each sector have different priorities? How do we measure progress? Many questions that we can start to answer in these conversations and future workshops between the university and LIPI. Another question is, how can we, as researchers in LIPI and in the University of Queensland, how can we contribute? What is our role? How can we help policymakers prioritise their investments, including both overseas aid and actions in our home country? How do we help them prioritise outcomes and develop effective governance so that the right government department is addressing the relevant goal, rather than one government ministry having to try and achieve all the 17 goals? So there is an opportunity here for LIPI and for University of Queensland. This is new work. This is a new context, and we can be some of the first research organisations to be active, and that is why it's a big opportunity for us. We can take the first steps to think about these bigger issues and to create a role for and a relevance for our research organisations. What I will show you today are 3 publications that the University of Queensland has put out on on the SDGs and how to help pave the way to achieving this action. I will take a step now to tell you a little bit about where I work within the University of Queensland in the Global Change Institute. We are a very special institute. We call ourselves a virtual institute because we have not many staff inside, and we link with all the researchers across the university, and that is where the research occurs. And we bring it together and we catalyse it and drive it. We also, in doing so, we take many different disciplines and we bring them together for transdisciplinary research, and that requires new thinking, new methods created from many different disciplines. We have a new deputy director. She comes with a background in political science, and this is helping the Global Change Institute to move to become a think tank. So we mean in being a think tank, we are taking research from the university and delivering it to policymakers where the research can be applied and can make an external impact. To do this, to play this role, this bridge from academia to government, we have received some training from a senior public bureaucrat. In this training, we looked at the structure of the government, the timing for when policy is developed, and the policy cycle, and how that is linked to the budget, the funding cycle. We have learned about what level of government to engage with, and it depends on what you are seeking, and the methods by which we can engage. So there is email, there are meetings face-to-face, we can go through a third party that is trusted and known, And we can have an event that is structured or a structured interaction. So when we think about research organisations like LIPI, like the University of Queensland, we can look at what is our role. And here I am showing you a slide by a man called Roger Pielke, who wrote a book called The Honest Broker. And you can see on the screen there are 4 squares of different roles of engagement that can be played. Pielke's book and me, we are both proposing that research organisations play the role of honest broker of policy alternatives. The definition of this is that honest brokers clarify existing policy options and identify new options. And in doing so, we are integrating or mixing through stakeholder thoughts from civil society, industry, and we also mix it with available scientific knowledge. Now I will tell you a little bit about the discussion papers that we have written through the Global Change Institute, but involving many, many colleagues across the university. These discussion papers, we call them discussion papers, maybe you call them policy briefings, policy papers. There is something that is similar about all of them. They are short, they are evidence-based, and they are on a single topic. The idea is the government policymaker can pick up the discussion paper and understand very quickly what is the main message from the document and how can they apply it. So it is applicable. I'm going to show you a few slides about how we went about the policy discussion papers, what they are about, and also how to measure their impact. So this slide is firstly about the key aspects to create these discussion papers. And I'm telling you this story because I think this is a path that LIPI may want to take, or maybe is already taking, and these are ideas that can help. Because as a research organisation, LIPI can engage with the government through these shorter discussion papers. Some of the very important aspects to make these discussion papers happen is to have one person who is coordinating and also a lead author. Maybe that's the same person, but someone who is driving it all the time to achieve the timeline and the outputs. Something else that is important is to look at what does your research organisation have expertise in. You do not want to be writing outside your expertise, so you need to know what is the angle that you can take and what is the evidence that can be provided by your experts in LIPI. We wanted to be very inclusive, so when we started this process, we made a wide call to everyone relevant at the university who would like to contribute. And that is how we got a very diverse range of people from public health and policy making and civil engineering and social science. Many, many different disciplines were brought together. We had, for each discussion paper, sometimes up to 20 researchers involved. And we brought them together and we brainstormed ideas for how we could contribute, in this case, to the SDG agenda for Australia. And we chose the topics based on current global issues, the university's expertise, and also the policy interest. So in this case, SDGs. We decided on some topics and then we circulated and prioritised the top 3. And then we made a schedule with timelines of when we would publish each one. In 2016, we published 3 discussion papers, and the topics started, the first one was very broad, very macro. And then the third one that we released just last week was more micro, more specific. And the tone that we used, or the language that we used, the angle that we took, was not critical of government. This is important because we want to find a way to collaborate and engage positively with the government. So instead, our language was trying to find a way to use policy as a foundation, the existing policy as a foundation, and then to enhance it and go further. So we are trying to be that honest broker with the government, but not by being negative or critical, but by taking them with us on the journey. the process, by having many authors, we each wrote different sections, and then that lead coordinator, which was me in this case, brought it together, and then we all had input into the final copy. Now I will talk about the outputs from our discussion papers. On the screen you can see there are 3 covers. The first one is about the SDGs. What is it? What is Australia's role in it? And what are the possible influences from each of those 17 SDGs on each other? Because we know that water is not really separate from gender equality, is not really separate from well-being, that water, quality, healthy, safe drinking water can affect whether people are healthy, and we know that women are often doing a lot of the drudgery work in bringing the water and carrying the water or boiling it and cleaning it if they do not have a water source in the house. So there are many linkages. The second discussion paper is to try and map those linkages. We used a method that shows the influence from one goal to the next goal, and we also did the same method for SDG 6 on water and sanitation, and looked at the targets and how do the targets influence each other. And our final discussion paper for this year was investigating just one topic, and that was the target of community participation. And we were looking at this inside SDG 6 for water, sanitation and hygiene, and asking what is best practice. Each paper was launched at an important and relevant event. The first one was launched at our own University of Queensland Water Forum, which is an annual forum for all the researchers in water across the university. The second one was launched in New Delhi in India at the International River Symposium. And the third one was launched just at the end of November in Bangkok at the United Nations Economic and Social Council for Asia Pacific at a special event in SDG Week. My final slide on the discussion papers is about dissemination. And actually, I have one more after this. The dissemination is how do you take your research product and share it so that as many people as possible read it, but also the correct people are reading it that you want to influence. So you need to make a plan. And at the university's Global Change Institute where I work, we are very lucky to have a communications team who are very clever about understanding both how to structure documents and how to make them look nice and to put them on to different methods of dissemination, social media and websites, etc. But they are also clever in the language that they use and how to reach the target audience. Hopefully at LIPI you have some communication staff who can also play this role. So we took the approach that a good dissemination, a good launch goes to in many different formats and to many different audiences. So not one answer to good dissemination. We used the website, we used Twitter and Facebook for social media. We used research websites such as ResearchGate and academia.edu where researchers will be looking. And we used theconversation.com, which is a daily news feed, and it does have authors from Indonesia. It's very big in Australia where it started, but now it is international, and I recommend that you look for this. Many stories are written by researchers, but they work with an editor to ensure that the style of writing and the language is good for a much wider audience. And there are many other news agencies that pick up the stories because they're always very strong, good quality stories, and they take them to other news agencies. So it is a very easy way to share your research. Another form of research is to use the document as a launch to request meetings with policymakers. And you can send the document by email, direct email, and then ring up and ask to meet or to discuss this further. And of course, as researchers, we need to also be publishing in academic journal articles. This is a slower process It takes a longer time, but still very important. And perhaps this is a good way to make sure that the research community is also coming on this research journey with us. These are the articles from the conversation that each one was published to align with the launch of each discussion paper. And there will be printed copies on your desk from Helen and Lee. Now, this is the final slide about impact from discussion papers. So how do we measure impact? First, we have to know what is the impact we are seeking. So maybe LIPI's impact vision might be a little bit different to ours at the university. What I have put on the screen here is a dashboard from theconversation.com. And what is interesting here is that you can see the number of readers from these two articles. Here at the time that I took this, I had published 2 articles from the discussion papers and over 9,000 readers. And you can see the majority were reading in Australia. And it looks like the readers from Indonesia and Asia Pacific were very small. Well, maybe not too small, but it's all combined into that blue triangle. And then the United States were a similar size. So that's one way to measure impact. But you can also see, here's another impact. This is a letter from the United Nations inviting us to deliver the discussion paper at their recent SDG week. So they found us because of these publications. So that's another way to measure impact at a higher level. We have also been invited to give specialist seminars for the Australian Water Association, which is the industry group. We have done media interviews. We have been invited to other conferences. So you have to decide, how do you measure impact? What are you looking for? What is success? Something that we need to do more of at our university is to do that one-on-one engagement with policymakers, and that's picking up the phone and making time to go to the capital, to Canberra, and make those meetings. We are almost at the end of this presentation, so I would like to share what I think are the key messages is that research is very, very important. We need that strong evidence base, but we need people to know about it. And the traditional university research and research organisations has been to publish in journal articles and to speak at academic conferences. We need to change that to expand our audiences, and that can mean writing in a different style and communicating in a slightly different way and using more modern forms of communication to make that impact. I want to also share the message that policymakers are very, very excited and interested to be updated with latest relevant research. But they don't have much time. They don't really like to read heavy, long academic articles. So we need to be the flexible ones as researchers to deliver in a format that they can pick up and read quickly. And there are very many bonuses for your organisation to engage with policymakers. It makes you stay relevant as we move to a future of research that is much more engaged. That relevance can ensure that you have a stronger profile, and when you are seeking funding for your own research, this can make you more relevant and more competitive. And also, to be that trusted advisor or honest broker is a very critical role that feeds into both your profile and your relevance as an organisation. Jadi, saya akan menyelesaikan pembicaraan saya dalam bahasa Indonesia lagi. Terima kasih banyak untuk waktu Anda untuk mendengarkan saya hari ini. Saya berharap bahwa presentasi saya telah memberi Anda semua beberapa ide-ide baru untuk membuat penelitian Anda memiliki dampak yang lebih dan untuk menciptakan perubahan. Universitas Queensland ingin tetap bekerja dengan Anda pada dampak ini. Makalah kebijakan yang saya sebutkan tersedia di website kami. Rincian kontak saya di layar. Semoga berhasil dengan penelitian Anda. Terima kasih.